I know most of my following here is for Dota 2, but I did want to take a moment to do a chat with chat, one of my little video blogs here before we play some Dota and just chat all things PoE. And we're going to use this to introduce that interview I did with Chris Wilson, the managing director of Grinding Gear Games. Insane. Absolutely insane trip, and I'm so glad I did it. I have been wanting to go to New Zealand or Australia basically forever at this point, and I've been waiting for a Dota event to pop up that I could be invited to, and it just has not happened. There is so little Dota action in that region, and when there is action, it's not really that friendly for outsiders because the budget just doesn't make any sense. Why are we flying in these people when we could just be supporting our local scene? So I finally decided ExileCon in Auckland, New Zealand. This is the opportunity to go. I got hooked up with media passes. I went with my boy Bill from Beat Esports. Previously, Canada Cup is one of the big things they've done in Dota. They worked with us on Captain's Draft 3 or Captain's Draft 4 rather. And they also worked with us on Northern Arena. That was how we got involved. That event was through our Beat connection. So it was a lot of fun to go with Bill. He's like a hardcore PoE fan. I'm still kind of a PoE noob, right? I've only played 3 leagues, I think, and now I couldn't be hyped for the future. They announced that the 4.0 is actually going to be Path of Exile 2. They're going to add 7 new acts to the 10 acts that exist already. It's a new game engine. Skill gems are now moved out of items into their own tab. They've made some amazing quality of life changes. This game is going to be fantastic. I think Path of Exile is already the spiritual successor to Diablo 2 Lord of Destruction, a game that is stupidly close to my heart. It's the online game that got me into online gaming. That was my true first experience of playing a game and feeling like, fuck, I just want to grind. I just want to play. I remember running home from middle school. I've got my Storm Shield. I want to trade it for something. And I kind of lost touch with that genre as I got into World of Warcraft, as I got into Dota, Warcraft 3. Diablo 3 came out, and I would consider that game a complete flop. I don't think it was very well designed. I don't think it was fun. I think removing the trading mechanics for the real money auction house completely crippled the goodwill that community had. Blizzard just made bad decision after bad decision. I've heard Reaper of Souls was supposed to be pretty good. Don't really give a shit. To me, that bridge has been burned. So Diablo 4 had this big announcement at BlizzCon. It went pretty well. I think the cinematic that Blizzard released was really cool. The new art style for Diablo 4 looks really awesome. Don't know about the gameplay. PoE 2 is just taking what we have with the current Path of Exile and cranking it up another level. I got to play the demo for 2 45-minute sessions. It's definitely harder. The creatures definitely feel more dynamic, like you're fighting things that actually matter, which is pretty cool. And like I said on the podcast, you got to remember that Path of Exile has been around for a pretty long time. And a lot of it was almost in that indie game sort of status. And it's gotten to the point where they're backed by Tencent. I think Tencent owns like 90 or 80% of Grinding Gear Games. So they've got the resources to push it to the next level. I did write a little article about Path of Exile 2 as well as Path of Exile Mobile, which they announced. Pretty cynical on the mobile game. Still in like early alpha, so it's hard to judge it completely, but a lot of optimization that needs to go on there. I don't think PoE is a game that's going to translate to phones that well. I think the inventory management is the most difficult part. You're used to having a mouse and being able to mouse over stuff really quick. Having to like click and hold to see shit on mobile is like dealing with the items is painfully slow. The gameplay is whatever. You're just mashing buttons and shit's dying. I mean, it's relatively satisfying, but yeah, I think PoE 2 is going to be a game changer. And, whether the mobile game sucks or not, I write at the end of that article that I remain confident because I think GGG is the right company to do something like this. They are so reliant on community feedback to morph their game and make decisions that I think they are actually on the pulse of what makes their game good, what their hardcore players want, what their kind of more casual players want, and how to bridge the gap. So they're adding more endgame content with the Conqueror of the World of Atlas or whatever it's called. That's going to come out in 3.9 in a couple of weeks, and they're going to start to phase in these changes for the big 2.0 until the drop comes sometime in 2020. So I'm becoming like a shill for Path of Exile, but for real, it's a free game. The monetization model is 10 out of fucking 10. The stuff that you can buy is either cosmetic or gives you some nice convenience kind of upgrade in the game, but you don't feel like you're missing out if you don't spend money. I really feel like this is a game dev that, even though it's cliche now, it was created by gamers, and all of their decisions are morphed by the gamers that play their games. And it seems like they are one of few right now really doing it right and being very methodical and cautious about how they release content, making sure not to do any kind of quick cash grabs. Everything that you've bought in the first Path of Exile is going to be transferable to Path of Exile 2. So it truly is one game just with two different campaigns now, which is fucking awesome. So I also want to show off some of the merch that I got. I guess you could see it in the corner here. So I've got this guy. So one of the sand scrubs. What the hell is it? The sand, sand spitter. There you go. I got the plushies, right? They came prepared with merch. I love stuff like this that I can plop on in the background. I thought this was really cool. I'll probably never open it. Exalted orbs made out of stress foam. So this is like a stress ball of an exalted orb. I wish I'd bought two. I want one to use, and I want one to keep in the plastic. But even if you look on the back, I thought it was cool. Like, they printed the actual mods of the item in game. Kind of hard to see there with the reflection, but super nerdy and just very, very unique. I'm sure the markup on this was like 1,000%, but what are you gonna do? I, for the first time, got my media badge signed by the CEO, Chris Wilson. There you go. Look at that. Media coverage. Met the CEO. And I talked about this a little bit on the podcast with Trent, but this was by far one of the coolest things that they had at the whole convention. The trading card game. And this isn't like an artifact knockoff or something. When you get your little goodie bag, you have this in there. And it had like 5 cards in it. It's totally random. And you can get stuff like, a blue item like this wooden hammer of burning that does a little bit of extra fire damage. Sometimes that comes in handy. And you also had crafting pieces. Like, here's a rare. This is just an armorer's scrap, and probably can't read it with the autofocus, but you can go to one of the crafting benches and get an additional defense on one of your armors or shields. So there's all these different stats that monsters can have: lightning, cold, all this kind of shit. There's a little key in here. Then you had to walk around the convention, use your cards to kill monsters that were just staffers from GGG wearing shirts that had different points on them. And you had to have a weapon and an armor, and they would take durability hits. So you see this one is actually, there's like a little crimp in the corner there. That's because I used it right down here, and they took one of the durability. And then when there's 2 durability knocked on it, it's destroyed and can't be used again. So you could actually play real life Path of Exile that felt like actual Path of Exile. You're rolling these items, you're doing all this stuff. And the best part was you had an excuse to walk up to GGG employees, developers, artists, server people, everyone. And normally, even me, right? I've got a press badge. I've met some of these people before. I'm still awkward going up to people at conventions. If I don't have a specific, hey, I've met that guy, or I want to pitch them this, or I want this piece of information, I don't know how to make small talk with people like that. I get really self-conscious about wasting their time, and I feel like I don't want them to think I'm a fan. I want them to see me as a colleague and all this shit. And I clam up. I don't know what to do. This made it so easy. I can just walk up to him and be like, hey, bro, oh, you're a zombie? All right, I'm kind of an idiot. Can you help me with these cards? And you could actually make a connection with someone and still play your little game. So on the back, there were special cards you could get if you complete all of these challenges. Still kind of hard to read, but there's different tiers. One of them is craft an item. You had to defeat the bosses like Brutus, Avarius, Malachi, and Kitava. And Chris Wilson, the CEO, he ended up being the shaper who was like the final boss. And if you went to the after party that was hosted by GGG in the same venue, then you could, battle him and get the grand prize and the big drops or whatever it was. Super time consuming. I think there were 70 people that were able to battle Chris, and most of the ones that I talked to said it took them a good 10 hours of playing, 12 hours of playing. It was only a 2-day convention. It was only open for 10 hours a day. So it's like a day and a half of the con. You're just grinding this fucking card game. Those nerds went in. I only did it a little bit because I was filming and also wanted to capture some of the event and play the demos and stuff. But really, really novel idea. I was a little nervous at first when I heard people talking about the card game. It's like, oh, Jesus Christ. Please don't tell me this is a Magic knockoff. Okay, please don't tell me that we're going to go down the artifact rabbit hole. Yeah, it was the complete opposite of that. And you can't play this now. This was just a limited time, only at the event. This convention, we want to give people something to do. So could never happen again. Maybe ExileCon 2, you never know. But Very novel idea. And I think this is a perfect example of how GGG thinks, right? It's not how can we make the most money? It's not how can we min-max these other metrics that feel a little bit topical. How do we get the most eyeballs? It's how do we create the most fun? How do we create the best experience for people? And I swear to God, dude, Chris Wilson, he is a god. I have never seen someone with that much power. Like, he is kind of the face of their company in a lot of ways. He's like the Gaben of Path of Exile. His level of fan service, just unbelievable. He spent the entire after party, a 4-hour party, just sitting there doing signing sessions, talking to fans, doing the battles. He stayed until like 1 a.m. after it was done. Hours afterwards, he stayed to sign and talk to people and just soak up some of that hype and energy. It felt like they had this sense of, we know New Zealand's in the middle of nowhere. We know people had to pay a lot of money out of pocket to get here. So we are just so thankful that you guys came, supported our event, and had a good time, and also bought some of our fucking merch. And you could see the passion there. This was so different from like a corporate BlizzCon where the president comes out and gives this lame PR speech about, we believe everyone has a voice, unless it's against politics that we don't agree with. I think we should keep politics out of video games. You sell a fucking war game. There's like a certain point where you can't just say shit anymore because the audience is listening. They're listening and saying, dog, are you listening to the words coming out of your mouth? This doesn't make any fucking sense. And GGG is like the polar opposite, where they're super approachable. We emailed Chris and said, hey, we'd love to do an interview with you in the office and get a quick tour. Immediate, sure, I'd love to do that. Let's pick a time. Let's set a date. Very generous with his time, and just a real, genuine vibe. This is a person who takes pride in his product and is thankful that people have helped him make his dreams come true as a game developer. So super interesting just to see all of it in action. Relatively small venue, around the same size as Benaroya Hall. So a very intimate event overall. Met a surprising amount of Dota fans at ExileCon as well. I was kind of stunned by the amount of people that came up to me just like, you look familiar, or hey, are you that Dota guy? It was more than just a couple, and I wasn't really expecting anybody to recognize me. So that was just a cool little crossover of like, holy shit, Path of Exile has crazy crossover with Dota and these other kind of free-to-play games that have a really high skill cap and are difficult to master. That resonates with the same core audience. So I don't know. I'm stupidly optimistic for the future of Path of Exile. I hope they support more racing. I think the final race that they did at ExileCon was the best one yet. Still difficult to spectate. The production is a little bit hinky, but overall, if GGG invest more in the racing infrastructure, I actually think Path of Exile is going to become a competitive game. I think like 3 years from now, 4 years from now, we're going to be looking at that scene like, where did this come from? I didn't know Path of Exile was so cool. And the amount of reach they got from their announcement, the debate of doing the 4.0 and it's actually just a 2.0, it got a lot of traction. That announcement video had over 1 million views on the first, was it the first day or the first 48 hours it was out? Pretty bananas. Even the race at the last day, I think it had like 60, 70K concurrence. Some of the early announcements were up like 150, close to 200K. So there were a lot of eyeballs on this ExileCon, and the feedback was pretty positive. Very few tech issues. Very, very smooth event. I think this bodes well for the future of this company. I'd like to see an ExileCon 2.0. I think that'd be pretty fun. One of the last things I wanted to show off, I just love these things. These giant art books. They're so cool. I had it in the back. It's just living behind me now on my bookshelf next to my Dota comic books. But, I'm still new to Path of Exile, so a lot of these character models don't really, you can see it's still sticky. I haven't even opened it yet. But really awesome stuff. I'm glad that they had collector's items kind of like this. I love the art for the Exalted Orbs as well. But really cool merch. I had a couple of shirts I wanted to show off too, and I don't know what the hell I did with them. So I guess they're not going to make the cut. But yeah, definitely if you haven't gotten into Path of Exile yet, you should. You should check it out. It's worth the download. This is a great time to start getting over the learning curve. I remember when it came out and I had this feeling of, maybe Torchlight's going to be the one that passes Diablo. Really, it's going to be Diablo 3. I installed Path of Exile a long time ago, looked at some of the items and went, all right, this looks too complicated. This game's not going to be around long enough to make it worth learning all this stuff. boy, was I wrong. I couldn't have been more wrong about that. And with so much new content coming out, this is a good time to get your feet wet, get an understanding of the game, and then really go ham in 3.9, 3.10, and eventually 4.0 when it comes out. Love it. It's great to be able to go to an event and really connect with the people that make the event happen. So I think that's about the end of my spiel. If you guys have any questions about ExileCon, I would be happy to take them. This would be a good time to fire away, though I know my PoE demographic here is still pretty small. I am excited to work with Beat Esports moving forward. I think we're going to try to do more races. We've already been in contact with GGG, kind of expressing our interest, like, hey, as soon as you guys are ready to do events, please let us know, because we really want to do events. It's a fun game with a pretty hardcore community. The Con. I know it seemed like such a different from any other convention. They put themselves on the same level as fans to encourage interaction. Yeah, absolutely. You didn't get this vibe that there was this big separation of like, oh, the VIPs. It kind of reminded me of what Dota after parties used to be like in like the TI4 kind of in pre-era, when, yeah, there were hardcore fans, but we didn't need this big segregation between VIPs and fans and staff, because everybody was just kind of in this same pool of being excited to be there. And the after parties were like the VIP parties. That was kind of what this event was like. There was no VIP area. Streamers, personalities were just walking around. Chris was sitting at a table just like next to the DJ. There wasn't any segregation. It was like, hey man, we're all Exilers here today. We're all Exiles at the con. Let's hang out. So would you personally or Moonduck do possible content for PoE? Is there anything else? Or is there anyone else in Moonduck playing PoE? Pimp Muckle is a huge PoE fan. He is like a hardcore PoE nerd. So I think him and I are the two big ones. I don't know. Recently, I've been contemplating this idea with Moonduck that maybe we fucked up a little bit not pursuing events that we don't want to cast. You know, our lens was always, do we have talent that want to do this and make it fun? If not, we shouldn't do the event. That was PUBG in a nutshell for us. We did 3 events. The first one was very successful. 2 and 3, not so much. By the end of the third one, we went, what the fuck are we doing this for? Nobody's watching. We're not having fun. Fuck this. Just because our casters don't want to do it doesn't mean it's not a value proposition to run good events and just hire other casters to cast it, right? I can still produce a tournament without casting it, and that could still be valuable and help us do stuff. So PoE, to me, fits into that category. I am so far away from ever being able to cast PoE, right? I might not ever be able to. The game's been around for, 8 years now, 7 years now? It's a stupid amount of data. I haven't put enough hours in to understand all of it. When I watch the casters casting races, it kind of blows my mind how much knowledge they have. I'm sure that's how other people feel about us casting Dota, when you have every item memorized, every spell memorized, all this kind of data. But PoE just feels even more chaotic because there's so much depth across all these different classes and so many variations. It's almost hard to comprehend. So all that is a long-winded way to say, yes, I really want to do stuff with PoE. If we can utilize Moonduck to do good events or leverage things, I'm all about it. If not, then I'm happy to work with Bill. And if that doesn't work, old Zyori's doing something himself. Personally, I believe in the future of PoE, and we're going to find a way to make it happen. So we'll figure out what that means. Oh, hello, Snow Fox. We're talking about PoE. Was there competitive PoE at the con? Yes. So with competitive Path of Exile, it's all about racing. It's all about time. So you take these players that are insanely good at mechanics, and they move as quickly as they can through the map. And in this case, it was a race to kill Kitava, who's like, is it the Act 5 boss, I think. So it starts off pretty easy. You know, you can kind of just run through stuff. You want to strategically kill like really dense packs and things to get items. One of the issues is still RNG. One of the players got what's called a tabula rasa. It's an early game drop. It's like a really light item that gives you a 6 link of all white sockets. Stupidly rare for that early on. And he actually ended up getting dead last. So there's this weird kind of, yeah, there's an RNG element, but how much of those items really help you? Kind of hard to decipher, and it seems like having a really good script and knowing exactly what you're going to do is faster. The guy that won, Ty23, he's actually the guy that won the Beat Invitational event that I worked with Bill on, that I produced. Stupidly good. He beat everybody by like minutes. It was like 5 minutes or 3 minutes or something. And he's really quiet. He's very reserved. Until this event, I don't think anybody knew anything about him. When we did our event, it was required that every player streams so that we can clock it and recapture their stuff. And he had like a dinky laptop. He was streaming at like 480p quality. We all thought it was a joke, and he fucking won the qualifier. And then he showed up on LAN. And he is one of the most soft-spoken guys ever. We talked to him at the after party. He said, "Hey, man, congratulations. Nice to meet you. We were happy to see our boy qualified through our event, make it." And he basically said, "Yeah." Then he looked at me and went, "I recognize you from Dota." I said, "Oh, are you a big Dota fan?" And he kind of went, "Eh." And then that was the whole conversation. There was no follow-up. There wasn't like, "I saw you cast," or "I know BTS." It was just like, "I've seen you do Dota." All right. And that was it. And we took a picture and walked away. He's like one of the most... He would make such a good off-laner in Dota. It's fucking insane. I got some of those Brax vibes of just that like completely stonewall, like, okay, I see why you're good at racing, dude. You are in the zone and you do not get tilted. And it's silly impressive how well he makes the game look easy. He'll just run into Act 5, and he's dodging this, he's dodging that. He's just, like, destroying these bosses. You're like, man, this game's really fucking easy. And you try to do that with the items that he has, and it feels nearly impossible. So there is a pretty high skill cap on it. I think that the big time saver is inventory management. That's, like, the big thing. I mean, probably half of my hours on PoE has just been spent looking at inventory screens, trying to figure out what to do with my items. You can't even see what items they have. They move their inventory so fast. And they do stuff where they're, like... They're moving items and gems around while they're fighting to try to min-max better. Instead of running across town, they'll log out and log back in so that they can jump back to the spawn point and save like half a second. It gets really competitive. So I think there's still a big cap there. Eventually, racing to Act 5 is going to get boring. But with all this new content, I mean, they have custom leagues as well. You could do races to certain level thresholds. I think there's a pretty high ceiling on what you can do with competitive PoE. Yeah, the tabula rasa was rough. You could tell by the end that, was it Tai, I think, was the one that got the tabula. He ended up getting 4th out of 4, and he was, so obviously the last to finish. One of the weird things about racing is, like, so every other esport, one team wins, one team loses. The moment you win TI, you pop the champagne and you party. And in this case, you win the race, and then everyone else is still racing. So you have this moment of, I fucking did it. And then you look around and go, oh shit, I don't want to BBM. Everyone else is still playing. I don't want to start bragging on the stage while my fellows are still competing. So by the time you get to the award ceremony, a lot of the hype is done. The last person you're watching is literally the person who's gotten dead last in the race. And you want to be good sports and not just be like, well, you fucking lost, so let's get out of here. So you're watching this guy who's not going to get any prize struggle to kill the last boss, and the poor guy fucking died like 3 times. He died to an unlucky mob trying to run to the last boss, and there's a 1 minute like cooldown after you die. So it's just us. He's sitting there in the base, just watching that timer count down. You can see the look on his face of just like, fuck. I just want this to be over. He's like trying to close Path of Exile, and it won't fucking let him. He just wants to give up. And that was why I like that closing shot in the montage video I made so much, because the guy with the blue hair, that's Zizoran. He's one of the most popular PoE streamers, and he's next to the other sponsored players from Method. And he led that standing ovation for the last player to finish, who was in dead last, that was clearly tilting. And he was in the middle of the audience, and that's why he's standing up so awkward, like, yo, motherfuckers, we got to support this guy. He's fucking awesome, and he's struggling. And it was great to see a community that is a little negative. They're a little more similar to Dota. The PoE subreddit is harsh. It was cool to see something really positive like that, the community coming together, cheering this guy on. The casters fucking nailed it. They kept it completely positive, and they were kind of egging him on too. And it ended on a really high note, but there was a moment there where you could see him just like straight stressing about it, and it must have been an awful feeling. But really, really good stuff. Wow. And Ty23, apparently, according to the Sunker here, he announced yesterday he's going to retire from racing, which kind of blows my mind. It might not be that fun. I don't know if it's fun to be that good at racing, because it's so mechanical, and you don't take your hands off the keyboard. I mean, if you have an itch on your nose, you just deal with it. It's pretty intense gaming. And you can see it in the videos where as soon as they're done, they all start drinking water and stuff because they're just like, man, it would have been really nice to drink part of this Red Bull during the race, but you literally, like, you're sacrificing time if you take your hands off the mouse and keyboard. I talked to Ty at the after party and asked him, like, dude, are you going to start streaming now? Now that you've won, this is like the beginning of an awesome streaming career. You could be like one of those streamers that doesn't even use a cam or a mic, and people are still going to watch you in droves because you're so fucking good. I don't even know if he has like a streaming computer. He's one of those dudes that I would love to figure out what his goal is. Because if the reason he's not streaming is because of hardware or some other relative laziness that's easy to solve, I will fucking send that guy a computer. Like, he is that good. It would be a shame for him to not continue perfecting his craft, because the target that everyone's saying is possible is doing the Act 5 race in under an hour, and he didn't beat it at ExileCon. I think he was like 1 hour and 3 minutes, 1 hour, 5 minutes, something like that. He was just over. So there's still a big record to be broken, and I think no one has done that run in less than an hour yet. And that's got his name written all over it, man. It would be a real shame to just let that go. Sure, link the VOD if you've got it. Am I at the point where I make my own builds? Yes and no. I think every league, my spread is, okay, what's like the broken build? Does that build look fun? If yes, I try it. If no, then I look for something that seems more fun. Like my first league, I just wanted to play a ranger. I wanted to play something with a bow and arrow. It was not a good league for it, but I just wanted to see what that character felt like. So I usually shift through builds and try to look for something that seems a little bit more fun. I haven't played minions yet. I haven't done Winter Orb yet. Some of the really automated builds that slay really fast, like, yeah, maybe you farm really efficiently, but they appear less appealing. I played like a Mjolnir Smiter Templar one season, and it was before all the melee buffs, but I really enjoyed that. Like, that was a really fun character to build. Like, Mjolnir has a really high strength requirement, so you have to really play around with your items, and it felt like a fun puzzle. So no, I'm not at the point where I'm completely creating my own builds. I do like to edit stuff. I'm really bad at just cookie cutter. Okay, black and white, I'm going to do 100% what you do. Sometimes I look at the talents and go, maybe I'm missing something, but I want to try this talent. This looks way better. You know, what are you going to do? But no, I'm still a bit of a noob. And I've been cheating on Path of Exile with World of Warcraft Classic. I hate to say that out loud here on a PoE vlog, but yeah, trying to balance both, man. Trying to gear out my priest and also learn PoE. But for a lot of games, to me, it's an investment to learn the games. And I'm at the point in my career where, unfortunately, it's hard to justify investing that level of time in games if it's just for fun. And like WoW Classic's different because I've already played it before. I'm not really learning. I already know most of the stuff about the game, so I'm just replaying an experience that I enjoyed in the past. In the case of Path of Exile, now that I know the future's bright, I feel so much more motivated to sit down and learn this shit. Like, actually start memorizing some of the items, start memorizing some of the stuff, and even looking back and learning some of the historical things that I missed along the way and catching up on all that video content. You know, I feel much more safe putting my time and learning energy into Path of Exile now, because it's fucking here to stay, dude. Path of Exile is definitely around for the long haul. Yeah, thanks for that clip. I'm gonna check that out after the stream. I had no idea that Ty announced that. So, do all the features of the game, are they available normally on standard, or is their content locked to the actual league stuff? So this is one of the cool things about Path of Exile. It's kind of both. You can play on standard and it feels pretty normal. Every league introduces some sort of a new mechanic. So there was one that felt like a little bit of a tower defense. There was the monolith one where these units spawn and you have to hit them, and then the statues wake up and you kill the units. There was one with caravans where you're just walking around the world and all of a sudden this caravan's moving and there's these boss dudes next to it and you have to kill them before the caravan gets to its exit point and disappears. Some leagues have been better than others, but they always try to introduce some sort of a new mechanic that makes the game feel a little bit fresh beyond just, oh my God, the race to 100, fresh ladder. There is also a mechanic. And they change things. I mean, they come up with new skills or they nerf old skills. So very much there is variance league to league where it's not like, hey, this one build is good no matter what. It's not like, what was it, Frozen Orb in Diablo 2, where it's like, hey, this spell is just always the best spell, kind of no matter what. It varies a lot more, and it just feels like there's so much more complexity and nuance that there's a lot of ways that you can tackle the game. And there's most builds have like a really big strength and a really big weakness. You know, some builds can go really far, but they simply can't handle physical reflect, or they simply can't handle spell reflect, right? So that's part of what makes the game so deep, is that I don't think there's any one build that gets to the point where you're just a god and you can slaughter everything. You're always going to be, just by nature of your character, be really good at certain things and not so good at other things. And it just, you know, stuff like mining, the depth, you just keep going down. Eventually you get to this point where you're just getting one shot by shit, you know? If you want to put the hours in, the game scales really, really well. Yeah, I've been enjoying WoW Classic. I say this very loudly that it says something about Blizzard when their hottest game right now is a game that they made 20 years ago and they didn't touch at all. It's literally a 1-to-1 port of the same game. It speaks to how great of a game it is, how far ahead of the curve Blizzard was when they created World of Warcraft, but it also speaks to how far they have fallen since this game came out. It's alarming. It makes me nervous for like the future of even WoW Classic, but I'm trying to milk it while we can, while it's still fun. So, all right. Well, that was great, folks. Thank you so much for indulging me for some of this Path of Exile talk. Again, check it out. I am a full-blown shill. I have not been paid to be here. I'm going to cut the little chat for chat. I'm going to upload this to YouTube. I like to do these every so often, just whenever I've got like a topic to talk about. So I'm going to go ahead and roll the interview that I did with Chris Wilson. Hopefully some of y'all will find it interesting. And then I'm going to hop into some Dota pubs. So we're going to stream for at least another hour or two after this. And I'm going to take this interview rolling as an opportunity to go get some breakfast. So I got something in the tummy for once this pub session gets rolling. Warning, the audio quality on this interview is not ideal.